Hi, everybody. Are we live? Okay. Well, welcome, everyone. My name is Caroline Colas, and welcome back to our series, Getting Personal with Parkinson's, a Facebook Live event. It's nice to be back after a week off for the Shavuot holiday. And I want to just introduce myself. I'm the Senior Director of Health and Wellness for the Marlene Meyerson JCC Manhattan and a Program Coordinator for the Edmund J. Safra Parkinson's Wellness Program, supported by New York's largest healthcare provider, Northwell Health. For over 12 years, the JCC has been hosting programs for individuals living with Parkinson's. In fact, we have an amazing event tomorrow night, which we will put in the chat if you want to join us. And you'll get a chance to hear from 3 top neurologists. You can find this program and all of our programs on our website at www.mmjccm.org/Parkinson's. This series is a way to put a personal face to Parkinson's and to introduce you to people living and thriving with PD. We'll also speak with experts occasionally, and maybe even a celebrity or two will stop by. You never know. This program is for anyone whose life has been impacted by PD, those diagnosed as well as family and friends. And I think Gary has invited several of his family and friends. So I hope you're on the call and listening. And we welcome your input. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know if you want to be a guest or if you have a topic that you want us to cover or something that you want to feature. All your inquiries can be directed to Whitney Chapman, who is in the behind the scenes today, at wchapman@mmjccm.org. And now I'm excited to introduce you to my guest, Gary Wigmore, a retired international businessman who worked in Asia for 2 years at the request of his law firm. He was only supposed to go there for 2 years, the law firm Milbank. It's a Wall Street law firm. And he ended up staying there for 25 years. And we're going to hear about that. Upon his return to New York to start a new life in retirement with his wife, he learned that he had Parkinson's, and that was quite traumatic. Gary and I had a chat that we pre-recorded, which I want to share with you now. And then please stay with us because afterwards, we will have Gary here live for a Q&A. So as you listen to our conversation, if you have any questions or comments or thoughts, put them in the comment section and we'll happily answer them. And now, on with the show. First of all, I just want to thank you so much for joining me today for a conversation. Say again?
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. The purpose of this series is really to get to know people, right? And we've known each other for a while, but I never realized that you were an international businessman. Yeah. And that you spent a lot of time and lived in Asia for quite a number of years.
Yes.
Can you just tell me about that?
Well, that sort of goes to my story. You know, I was born at a very young age. I proceed from there. No, I worked as both a banker and a lawyer in New York City for a number of years. Ended up at a big Wall Street law firm for a couple of years on Wall Street. They asked me if I would be interested in helping to go build our Asian offices and establish a presence there. And, you know, I had never been to Asia, had no idea what to expect. My wife didn't want to move to China. I told her it's not China, it's Singapore. Long and the short of it, I finally agreed. I said, I'll go for 2 years. In the 2 years, I want to come back, and I want to make sure you pay to bring me back. And I was a nervous Nelly, my first foreign assignment. I went out there for 2 years, and the end of the story is ended up staying 25 years. And, you know,
25.
Yeah, so lived in Singapore, Hong Kong, Tokyo, worked in every country, including Myanmar and Sri Lanka and Mongolia and Indonesia. And every couple of years, I'd ask my wife, do you want to stay or go back? And it was always like, well, one more year. And then it got to the point where, you know, both kids had come back, both got jobs back here in the States. Lori and I were living in Hong Kong at the time, and she wakes up and she says, we came here, for 2 years. It's now 25 years. Don't you think we should go home? And,
Wow.
so then we decided to relocate back to the States. My intention at the time was to retire from the firm because I had been there long enough. I could retire and do consulting or other type of work. And this is all background for sort of the Parkinson's component of this, sort of came crashing its ugly head and disturbing all the better made plans of mice or men. The three things that were grief that had to be dealt with: the loss of my job, the loss of my identity, and the uncertainty of the Parkinson's notification and diagnosis.
That's a lot. When did you first notice something or suspect something?
I think it was definitely a couple of years before I came back. I think, and some of it might be job fatigue, but some of it was, I wasn't as patient as I used to be. Things sort of weren't working the way that they wanted to. But I always told myself, I'll retire from the firm and I'll do some consulting work. And not knowing anything at the time, not knowing anything about Parkinson's, and getting diagnosed here in New York City while I was standing in Cinderella's, the fish store, and the neurologist that had run some tests, some DAT tests and other scans, called me up and said, Gary, your tests definitely indicate a propensity or an acceptance. It's not inconsistent with Parkinson's. They didn't say I had Parkinson's. They say what the test showed, that it's not inconsistent with it. And, he said, but I'm going away for 2 weeks to the Hamptons, and call my secretary and make an appointment. Click. And I'm like standing in, my wife wasn't with me. I was by myself, and I'm like, oh shit, this is like the worst thing in the world. And am I going to just pass out and faint here in Cinderella's? And
what had you known about Parkinson's at that time? Did you know much about it?
Very little, very little,
So that must have been scary to not have any idea really what that meant.
Yeah. Yes, it did. And I had a great desire at first to kind of read everything there was and stuff. And I think I'm still getting my sort of the target things that I want to read identified, because you can read it and find anything on the internet. But, part of my approach to dealing with it is to, be rational about it, think about it, talk about it. The one thing another neurologist told me is like, Gary, you're not going to die of Parkinson's. Your mother is alive at 91, and your father died when he was 92, and they didn't have Parkinson's, and they expect. I was trying to deal with all that stuff, but not be overwhelmed by it.
Right.
And
what
so
websites did you find?
I didn't know a lot about. I knew very, very little, to be honest.
Yeah, we had Rhoda on, and she was saying that she checked the internet too, and she found the Michael J. Fox site really helpful. Did you find it was a catch-22, that some of the things that you read were helpful and some of the things that you read weren't helpful?
No.
Or did you go right towards, a reliable source? Like
I guess I go to, if I opened up and was browsing the internet and just looking at Parkinson's, I would be inclined to, check on things dealing with exercise and nutrition and lifestyle, because those are the things that I believe I have some, not complete, but some control over. And, my view from the very beginning was, it is what it is. I'm not going to change it standing here in Cinderella's and scream or cry or whatever. it is what it is, and I'm going to do what I can do. And I have a lot of good doctors and very close to the medical community in New York. And over the years, I was always a guy that went to Asia, and they came back and they said, "What exotic countries did you go in this month?" And it would be, India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Korea. I even got invited to North Korea once, China, Indonesia, and so I was all over the place. And so, I guess I looking as I look into the internet and stuff, I'm interested in stuff that will help me rationalize or develop the behaviors that will maximize the probability that I live long and without really bad symptoms. So I bike, I ride, I play squash, I do yoga, I do boxing 3 times a week, I do dance and Nia and other dance things, and some singing classes. And it's at the point now where it's like I'm like kind of overloaded. I need to divide up the time a little bit, so it just works better because I want to do it. I want to do it all.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm the same way. Even, like in my life, someone said to me recently, they had access to my calendar and they said, "Your calendar's insane." But I can hear what you're saying. So you went to sort of a reliable source, and you were looking to say, what can I do?
Part of the difficulty coming back and dealing with head office is like, in the field, I called the shots. The chairman once told me, Gary said, "Whatever you do out there in Asia, I don't want to learn about it on the front page of the Wall Street Journal." I said, "Okay, Mel, I get the point. Don't get us thrown in jail."
Well, I can't help but notice your artwork in the back. As through all your travels, did you have time to, travel, to meet, read about the culture, to meet different people, to pick up, I don't know, different hobbies or anything like that? Or were you pretty focused on work?
Well, definitely focused on work, but one friend advised me, says, as soon as you get to Singapore, get a good travel agent and start planning your vacations. So, I mean, we took advantage of those things, and we did trips in Myanmar. We were in Vietnam. We were in places where there weren't tourists. Up the street, in Malaysia, in Borneo. So we did, and the kids always like screamed and hollered, we don't want to go there. We don't want to go to another temple. I said, "Damn it, you're a Wigmore. We're going to see another temple." Now, those places are the places that when they reminisce back, the ones that were the most exotic, or I could go on and on, but I shouldn't.
No, it's okay.
The things that were, pretty exotic, or we remember, like when my wife got off the train in southern India, and she didn't judge her time right, and the train was taking us up north, and she was like running along the side of the train, pulling her legs up, and they're like pulling her up, and all I could think of is
like a movie.
Well, if I lose her, I'm going to be back in Queens at some point with her parents, and her parents are going to be saying, "Oh, where's Laurie?" And I'm like, "I lost her in southern India." How would that go over exactly?
Not well. Not well. So this PD must have been such a shock to get that diagnosis, like from sort of this world global traveler, just retiring, coming back to the States, expecting to, live your life in this way, and then to get that news and be standing in Cinderella's, which is, for those of you that don't know, is like an amazing market, fish market, meat market, wonderful grocery. grocery, specialty grocery store in New York City on the Upper West Side. So how did Parkinson's manifest? You said the fatigue, you said you were irritable. It's like the snowflake disease. It manifests differently for every single person. Did you have a tremor? Did it impact your gait or your walk? As Pam Quinn was just on today, and we were talking about that. And that's how she did it. Did you notice in your voice, or what were
Right.
your symptoms?
I think I noticed some deterioration. I say a year before I actually went back, and it was like pre-retirement anxiety and depression, and then this
Mm.
got layered on top of it. After I came back, I started to reintegrate, and I had some tremoring in my left hand, and it wasn't constant. It was busy. If it was cold out, I would shake. Once in a while, I had tingling sensations or little tremors or little shocks in different parts of my body, not just the left side.
Mm.
And then I went to a neurologist here eventually, and got to one that basically did a visual examination and stuff, and said you have stage 2 Parkinson's.
Mm.
And she was I think trying to be very, very helpful. Her approach to Parkinson's is you know um, don't let it stop you from doing what you're doing. Just keep doing it and control the symptoms. um, and yeah.
Live your life.
But I guess it manifests itself physically in sort of some deterioration. I think along the way, as part of this now, I call it retirement depression that I was in. I sort of started to deal with it with the element of Parkinson's, of what do I do with Parkinson's, and that's when I started looking into things and trying to figure out. But I didn't. I don't know if this is relevant or not, but I didn't break down crying and sobbing and feeling sorry for myself. And I sometimes wonder if I don't have if I'm keeping those emotions inside me. And I have on occasion cried for something else, but it's really not. When I think of Parkinson's affecting me, I think of how are my kids going to. I want them to learn to deal with it, to learn to, daddy's going through a bad thing. But we're going to be okay. He's going to be okay. There's medicine for this. I sort of view this as an opportunity to be the role model that I want them to be, so they can deal with, disasters and trauma and, bad luck. It was like the time in this is sort of my job. I wasn't a partner when I moved to Asia, but in the first year I was in Singapore, I was, recommended for partnership, didn't, for different reasons, didn't make it, was going to leave the firm. The chairman convinced me to stay. I stayed. I became a partner next year. And, because I just remember when I got the first call from the partner in the States, and he said, Gary, there's good news and bad news. The good news is you got more than a majority of the partner votes. I said, that's great. He said, the bad news is you need 2/3 of the partner votes to become a partner. And by this time, we're in the hotel in Indonesia, at the Regent Hotel. My in-laws happened to be visiting. My wife was there. My 2 kids were there. They're already sobbing because they're getting the gist of the conversation, which is, you're not going to become partner. And that was sort of part of quid pro quo to staying out in Asia. And we were doing good work and everything. But I remember saying to the kids, you don't have to cry. Daddy I had a good job. I wasn't being fired. But I told him, I said, I'm disappointed. I didn't want to sugarcoat it and say, I'm not disappointed. I was disappointed and angry and upset. And the chairman said, come back to New York and talk with us, Gary. Talk with other partners who maybe didn't know you. You're just a name on the ballot. And so I went back and I talked to like 15 partners, and with every one of them, I said to them, I looked them in the eye and I said, if you were me, would you stay and, try to make it next year? And there was one partner who I respected a lot. He was just a solid guy. He's long retired. He sort of said, no, I would leave if I was you, because it's too humiliating. And I remember walking out of his office and saying, if it's the last fucking thing I do on this earth, I'm going to become a partner at Millbank Tweed, and that's going to be it.
And show him.
And show him.
Well, you know what's interesting is I love what you have talked about, because it's really in positive psychology, and you know that I moderate the Positive Psychology Hour, but in Positive Psychology Hour, they talk about Viktor Frankl, between stimulus and response, there is a pause, and there's an opportunity for us to respond. And it sounds like you had the forethought to say, wait a second, who do I want to be in this moment for my kids? Right. Not only when you were faced with challenge with the partnership, but also when you were faced with the challenge of having Parkinson's. I think that's remarkable. I think it is that you would just take a moment and say, wait a minute, there's nothing I can do about this, right? It is what it is, but I can choose how I respond to it.
Right. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having to talk with me today.
Oh, thank you for taking the time to talk with me.
And we're here live.
Almost live here.
Almost live. I know it took me a moment too.
Yeah.
There you are. Hey.
Wow. I had forgotten about all that stuff.
I was just going to ask you, how do you feel after watching that?
I feel good. A little bit of like, did I disclose too much that's not as relevant or not directly relevant? But I'm trained as a lawyer. I get paid to talk.
Well, I think you should be a part-time comedian, because when I was watching that, I was remarking on how much, and this is true of how I feel about you, Gary, is how much I laugh. And I guess my first question is, how much has humor and your kind of gregarious good nature helped you in facing adversity, whether it's the story you just told about not getting partner and then sticking with it and persevering and getting partner, or getting that Parkinson's diagnosis? Do you realize that you are a very humorous person?
Sometimes I can be, not all the time, but I do believe that humor is essential to our well-being. We all have to find ways to be more, I have 7 brothers and sisters, and when I went to visit them recently, my older brother, who gives me a hard time, and he says, so what's shaking, bro? Taking my hand, and it's like shaking it like this, and so it's like, but I think if you don't laugh about it, you're going to cry about it. And
absolutely.
And so I think humor is very effective for me, or makes me feel better. And I hope you wonder, you don't want to offend anyone, but you wonder, will it help other people too?
Yeah. I was also struck by, you talked about that story is a story of, the partnership story is a story of success. And again, I referenced it in Positive Psychology about Viktor Frankl, but one of the ways that we can handle adversity is to look in the past, how we have handled something, and then apply it to a difficult situation, which is exactly what you did with your Parkinson's.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a great note for our audience, is that you can look at that if you work with a life coach or somebody who's a positive psychologist, they will say, what are some of the stories that you have in the past that you can kind of mine the past for inspiration and motivation to get you through the present? And you did that instinctively. I just think that's amazing and really remarkable. So I just wanted to applaud you for that. How has PD impacted your relationships, your family, your friends, your professional relationships now?
Um, not not in a tremendously bad way or a good way. It's been, I've disclosed my diagnosis sort of slowly over time, but then I get worried that if I go to see someone, did I tell them about my Parkinson's? Maybe, and it became more anxiety producing to try to keep track of everything. And I also was feeling that I could tell someone my situation, and I'm friendlier with some people than other people, but other people that I trust, and I think, you know, they can find humor in my situations. And I mean, even Michael J. Fox and Larry David had, you see that show where the Michael J. Fox is asked to go get a soda for Larry, or, you know, Larry's getting a soda for Michael J. Fox. He takes it, hands him the can, and Michael is shaking a little bit, you know, and it pulls it open and it squirts all over Larry David, who goes totally nutso. But you know, there's
Serves him right.
it serves him right.
Oh,
There is humor out there, and I hope I have the ability to tap into it, you know, as I
yeah,
need it over time.
yeah. You had a lot of changes happening all at once. A move back to the US, stepping into retirement, and a PD diagnosis. How did you start to connect and rebuild your life? Like, how many years ago was that now?
Well, I came back 5 years ago, so
Okay.
yeah, I came back 5 years ago. I think the way, I mean, we have many friends in New York and this part of the world. So, you know, we have some, even though many of the relatives have moved away and gone other places, you know, people move around. But if the question is sort of how did I react to, well,
But how'd you do it? Like you had to rebuild your life, right? Did you do,
well,
I think you
I,
probably did some consulting at first, or what would you, how'd you do that?
I did do consulting for a while, um, a couple years, and I also do some pro bono work that I'm involved with, and I have some activities, but it's only when they got sort of overloaded, when I had, you know, tripled my, you know, my reservation for the squash court or something, you know, that I would worry about. But I think what I did was re-engage with people, find reasons to go over to see them, you know, before the pandemic, go see them, go talk to them, and even during the pandemic, you know, talk to these people, stay in touch. So I think me staying in touch with people that I already knew, or I knew from someone else who came back, and broadening that network. I just tried to reestablish some of the network that was part of my job, but is, you know, now part of my reintegration, you know, into sort of life.
Yeah.
But I'm very lucky also to have a caregiver that is beyond tremendous and beyond a miracle woman, and you know, that I think, you know, aids me a lot. And you know, it depends on your situation, but it's difficult to go through this alone, or with little understanding by other people. But having a good caregiver or taker is, I think, been tremendously helpful for me, and I think is for other people.
Yeah. Well, and of course, I don't want to assume, but I think you're talking about your wonderful wife. It's also great to hear you talk about her, you know, and I
Yeah,
know you guys exercise together, right?
yeah, we try to do 3 or 4 hours a day.
Yeah. Speaking of which, continuing an exercise regime and mixing it up so it doesn't feel boring seems to be one of your strengths. What do you like to do? Like, what are you doing now? You said a support group, a boxing class. Of course, you're in my Nia class. What else are you doing now, too?
Well, it's the couple boxing classes, which are boxing slash exercise classes. You
Mhm.
know, they're really they're dance and dance related type of classes. The Nia and the other thing, those are one of the ones I like the best, is, of course, is squash, because it's a very left brain, right brain kind of. Your brain is going back and forth, and I usually feel extremely well after a vigorous game of squash.
Yeah. It's always nice to hit a ball, I find. And what sustains you and inspires you?
What inspires me?
Yeah.
Um,
Is it true that you're learning something about Bitcoin?
oh well, my sort of driving for self education or
Mhm.
self improvement. I've recently gotten into taking some courses from MIT on Bitcoin and blockchain technology.
Wow.
A number of my friends have joined me, so hopefully it'll keep us busy. But I need to keep the head thinking and moving and reacting and everything. And trying to get your head around Bitcoin is going to be a very challenging
You have
endeavor.
to promise to explain it to me
Yeah.
once you get it,
I've read
right?
I've read chapter one 5 times, but I'm going to get it.
Uh, yeah, no, that's determination, right? So, over the years of knowing you and listening to our conversation just now, I really notice again how much you infuse humor into all of your conversations and how you manage it as a management strategy. And it really, would you say that humor diffuses the shame and it makes people more comfortable with the disease and and sort of fosters love and connection and is a great way to deal with Parkinson's? Would you recommend that?
I would definitely recommend people getting more involved in these activities, because I think it takes your mind off your current situation, but in a healthy way that circulates blood. And yeah, I mean, I would just say that everything I've seen or heard seems to indicate that the one exception to the rule about this being a progressive disease is that there's some prevention, or when it gets when what you're going through is really really bad. um, I think turning to people that you've connected with is very important. I lost my train of thought.
That's all right. I think you went to a really beautiful one, which is that relationships matter
Oh yeah.
and they're important. And Chris Peterson, who did a lot of research on values in action and came up with like all these years and years of research of basically that other people matter and that people matter and relationships are important. And it sounds like you're a relationship guy,
Yeah.
right? You like doing that. We have this PD event tomorrow at the JCC Manhattan, in which we're going to have top neurologists, and of course we have our exercise classes and our Parkinson's program that you've participated in. Why did you look towards the JCC for support, and has that been helpful?
The JCC has been extremely helpful. I think I got involved with them for the bicycle class. They had
Mhm.
and I did that for a couple of years, and then the pandemic occurred, and we don't know what happened. But the JCC just has, they have a roster of films and things like this, webinars, informational events. It's an incredible amount of information, and and I do think people should look at it all very closely, not obsess over it, but but be aware of what the science is telling us and, what we can and can't do about it.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, we're going to find out more tomorrow night about updates in research, and it'll be an opportunity for anyone to ask top neurologists. We have Dr. Rebecca Gilbert, Dr. Alessandro DeRocco, and Ramdi Radesh, I think is his name, from Northwell Health, joining us, and along with Suzette Chamoun, who's going to be talking about intimacy in relationships. And I think that's an important topic that a lot of people don't talk about. And we'd like to pride ourselves on having those difficult conversations. And I wanted to just say thank you for talking with me today and being so personal and really talking about your story. I think the story you shared about your partnership and when that challenge, not making partner, is really what this series is all about. It's about people being real and overcoming challenges and inspiring one another to not let Parkinson's define them, and also to live their lives, right? Is there anything you would like to say to take us home? And anybody, like if somebody had a new diagnosis, what would you say to them of PD?
I would probably repeat that you'll find Parkinson's may not cure the disease. It will mitigate its effects, and it'll have a positive effect on your everyday life and how you feel emotionally and physically. So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Keep living.
Keep living.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Gary.
You're welcome.
Take care. Thank you, everybody. And we are, you also have said to me, and I want to finish with some of the words that you gave me, don't resist being with people. All relationships contribute to a sense of well-being. And I think that's great advice. Suzette Chamoun, when she was talking to her about creating intimacy, she said basically ask for support and talk to your partner, even saying those things that you're afraid to. So speaking of which, I want to remind everyone tomorrow, Tuesday, May 25th, we are hosting the annual Gonzales Ramos Parkinson's Wellness Educational Symposium online from 5 to 7 p.m. It's absolutely free. We'll be hearing from Dr. DeRocco, Dr. Rebecca Gilbert, Ritesh Ramdani, I will know how to say his name by tomorrow, Suzette Chamoun, and more. We'll put a link to register in the comments below, and I hope you will join us. I want to thank very much Gary Wigmore for joining me today. And please remember, getting personal with Parkinson's is a series for you. So let us know if you're interested in learning more about our program or sharing with us, or if there's someone you think we should talk to that is living with Parkinson's that might be an inspiration for those out there that have been diagnosed recently or who have been living with Parkinson's. You can email Whitney Chapman at wchapman@jccm.org. We want to be having the conversations that matter to you. Next week, a gentle reminder, May 31st, we will be off to celebrate Memorial Day holiday. So we look forward to seeing you all on Monday, June 7th. Take care, everyone. Be safe, be well, and thank you so much to Gary.
Thank you.
Bye now.